Alright, now bear with me. I'm now in the Linux environment. I couldn't show you that directly on the PC without using like shaky cam a la my cell phone, so I don't want to do that. So what I've done is I've installed VirtualBox, and you can get this for Windows, Mac, or Linux, obviously. You just Google VirtualBox. It should be like the first link. You can download it for your respected OS, and then install. Nothing crazy to it, just simple stuff. So we're going to make a new virtual machine. Now if you downloaded an ISO like we did before, you can just use that. You don't need to burn to a USB. If you want to install to your computer, you're going to have to burn this ISO to a USB like we did before, plug that into your machine, turn off the machine, turn it back on, and then one of many things can happen. You either have to jam on the delete button before it starts, or the escape button, or F2, or F12. It really depends on your machine. You're going to have to Google how to get into the BIOS of your particular machine, but I can't help you too much on that because they're all different. But once you get in there, you'll be greeted with a BIOS or a simple screen that will give you options for time of the system or boot options. You're going to scroll over to boot, and then you're going to pick your USB drive and then boot. So we're going to emulate something similar to that here. Now, again, you don't have to install all this like I have. You can just try a virtual machine first, see if you're comfortable with it, and then if you like the virtual machine, then you can go whole ham like I have. Alright, so let's make a virtual machine. Let's click new. We gotta name it. I'm going to just name it Mint. Doesn't really matter. That's what's nice about virtual machines. You can just make them, delete them, doesn't really matter. So I'm going to give it a lot of RAM to use. I'm going to make a new virtual hard disk. Now it says recommended size 8 gigs, but I know that this Linux Mint here will require somewhere closer to 10. In fact, I think it's a little over 10. So we're going to make it, I don't know, 15, maybe 20 gigs. Really doesn't matter. I'm going to be burning this afterwards, but just keep that in mind. So we're going to create a new virtual hard disk now. Create. The standard disk image is fine. Dynamically allocated. Sure. Now let's give it, let's say 15 gigs. That's fine. We're just naming the hard drive. That's fine. Alright, so now we have a virtual machine. Now, this doesn't actually do anything. If you hit start, like it's going to complain that it doesn't have a startup disk, and it's going to like just die. It's not good. So what we need to do with this, let's power it off. Well, first let's make it a little more beefy. Yeah, so processor, it's under system, processor. Let's give it like 4 cores. You may not have this option, it depends on your PC. Some might just have 1, most will have 2, even fewer will have 4, you know. I'm going to do 4. Virtualization, this is hardware virtualization. If you have it, definitely check it. We can give it more video RAM. And I have 2 monitors here. I'm not going to use both monitors for this, but you can definitely run both monitors and like make it full screen and really live inside the operating system. It's quite nice. We need to connect this ISO to the machine to boot off of. So go to storage and then controller IDE. That's just a CD drive. And I click the little CD over here. Open. Hit OK. Now we should be good. This goes for start. And we're in. Alright, running in software rendering mode. That's fine. I'm going to click that. Alright, so this is a full-fledged Linux operating system right now. We can expand this out, make it bigger to work in, make it easier to see. We can full screen it if we want. But this wouldn't save because it's not installed yet. It's running off of a disk drive that we have up here. And we don't want it to be running off of the disk. We want it to be actually installed to the virtual hard drive that we have set up. So we're going to double click this Install Linux Mint. We're going to pick English. Usually I would recommend to go ahead and check that if you have the internet connected already, but we're going to ignore that for now. And we're going to erase disk and install Linux Mint. Because this is a virtual machine, you would want to do that. But if you weren't on a virtual machine, if you were installed directly to your computer, you may want to do something else. Now I have multiple hard drives on this machine here, this one. So I would pick something else. Hit continue. Now here we only have one disk drive. It's SDA, which is the first drive, but if you had multiple drives, which this virtual machine is unaware of, you would say SDA, SDB, SDC, and each one of them would have different partitions. Now we're going to pretend that's what we have here. So we're going to hit New Partition Table. Sure. And look, it's about 16 gigs, roughly, of disk space. So we're going to pick that first drive as the bootloader. We're going to press the plus here, and we're going to partition some hard drive to be used. Now we're going to start with what's called a swap space. Now this is useful if you're very low on RAM. Let's say this machine only had 4 gigs of RAM. You can write to the hard drive as if it were RAM when you run out of RAM. It can lead to performance improvements. Now I don't really need it here because we have 8 gigs of RAM, and I'm going to burn this afterwards, but we're going to pretend. So let's say, I don't know, say 1 gig. This is not 1 gig. 1 gig's 124, but we're going to pretend that's 1 gig, just for shiggles. Use as swap area. Primary beginning of the space, that's fine. Press OK. And now we have a swap. Now notice it's SDA1, so this is going to be the first partition here. Let's do another one. ext4, that's the standard format for Linux. You can go into other ones, but do your research of what you're doing. By default, ext4 is perfectly fine. Now this is going to be our root partition. Now, you can also make a home partition separate from your root, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to put everything under root just to continue with the tutorial and hit OK. That's going to take up the rest of this hard drive space, and then we're going to hit install now. It's going to give a warning screen like this that partition 1 is swap and partition 5 is ext4. Does that make sense? Let's go back. Well, this is SDA5. Let's put at the end. SDA1 is swap. Yeah, that looks right. So we're going to continue. And then it's going to go through its installation. I'm in Chicago, so it auto-detected that. Hit continue. US keyboard. Fantastic. Give it a name. We're going to say, I don't know, Max Payne. That's fine. And then your computer name, you can name it Max VirtualBox, whatever you want. It could be, I don't know, puppies or something. You pick a username. Now this is important. This is what you're going to be using to log in all the time. And a password. I'm just going to name this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, look, a fair password. Cool. Required to log on. I don't care right now, but pick what you prefer. You can also encrypt your home folder, but I'm just going to log in automatically and hit continue. And notice it's just chugging along. I click here to see some output. So we're going to go ahead and say restart now. And now we're done. We have a installed working Linux distro. Click on your update policy. Do optimized. That's alright. It's going to try and load what you need to update. You just hit install updates and it'll install this for you. Now, I've already done this on this other machine here. So it's kind of redundant slash a time waste. I'm not going to do that. But that's how you would install updates, at least through the graphical interface. And you can also do this on the command line, which will be the next video.